morning, Shenendehowa community. This is Dr. Robinson. I'm pleased to be here again for another community conversation. This is an opportunity to not only hear about some of the things that's happening in the district for me, but as you see in a minute, I'm also joined by the Deputy Superintendent, Dr. Elizabeth Wood, and the Board of Education President, Mrs. Deanna Stevenson. Just want to remind people that if you have questions, please submit your questions to shen.pr@shenschools.org that you see on the slide on your screen. We have certainly tried to address all the questions, recognizing that sometimes people submit questions that are very specific to them, and those questions, we try not to have questions about specific to students or individual staff clearly in a public venue. So if you submit such a question, we'll try to follow up with you offline, so to speak. So again, thank you very much for joining us this morning for a community conversation. As I said, Mrs. Deanna Stevenson, who is the Board of Education President, you will hear from her shortly. We're pleased that Deanna is here with us this morning as well. And we have our Deputy Superintendent, Dr. Elizabeth Wood, who will be providing some information in terms of what's happening in the district over the course of the summer. So we're also pleased to have Dr. Wood here with us. And I am Dr. Oliver Robinson, the Superintendent of Schools. For those of you who may wonder what I look like beyond a mask, that's a picture. Just a humor to start the morning. So again, reminding you, if you have any comments or questions, please submit them to shen-pr@shenschools.org, the email address that you see on the screen. So before we go into some of the budget conversations, I would just like to give Mrs. Stevenson, as Board President, an opportunity to share some opening remarks.
So good morning, everybody. What we're going to hear about today is our budget for 22-23. Dr. Robinson will go into detail about that. What I do want to say is, again, very sound budget, these kinds of budgets, I always say, do not happen by accident. They start planning for this process along with the board. After this budget process, we start planning for the next one. So really in the summertime, before school even starts, district leadership is having that conversation along with putting together the goals for the district. It's all about taking the programs, looking what the programs have, redefining the programs, building on programs, looking at our staff. Dr. Robinson's going to go into all of that, every person that supports this district. And again, it's not a small undertaking. So very proud of this budget. It's sound, it's effective, and it moves us ahead always. We're never complacent, moving us ahead.
Thank you, Mrs. Stevenson. So I'm going to transition to a budget slide. So you'll see that on your screen here in a second. And as Mrs. Stevenson mentioned, this process is a continuous process. Oftentimes people think the budget as an April-May process. It's actually a year-round process. And as you see here, each year we try to come up with a theme that in many ways exemplifies the focus for the year. And the theme as we go into 22-23 is boundless possibilities, redefining norm. We recognize that we're coming out of some very uncharted waters with the pandemic. And as a result of that, it forced us to be even more keenly focused on our North Star. What are we about as a school system? And so it forced us to question a lot of things in terms of why we do certain things, and more important, how can we do things better? And so as we look back over the last 2 years, going through the COVID pandemic, there were so many lessons learned. And we're trying to now figure out, of those things, what do we move forward as we plan for 2022, 2023, and beyond? And so certainly that theme of boundless possibilities and redefining norm comes into play, because where we are is where we are. And we're trying to figure out then subsequently, how do we ensure that as a system we keep moving forward and positioning the system to ensure options and opportunities for our students. And so we want to do that. More importantly, or should I say similarly, not even more important because it's all very important, we also find ourselves in a very unique competitive environment. as we think about what's happening in the larger economy, those things also play out within our schools in terms of competition for personnel. We're competing against private sector, other industries for quality personnel. And so certainly as a school system, we have to remain competitive in order to compete in that market space to ensure that we have the best individuals interacting with our students on a daily basis. And so when we think about the budget, it's not a one-year initiative, it's a multi-year perspective as we think about what's going to be 2, 3 years from now, 4, 5 years from now. And frankly, as I sit here as superintendent, my focus is on 2035, 2036. And some of you may wonder, why are we thinking about 2035, 2036? Well, those are the years that our kindergarten kids will be graduating from high school. And so we have to think about then, what do we have to continue to do in terms of quality work moving forward? And what else do we need to do to ensure that all our students, and emphasis is on all our students, are successful? So when you think about that, the biggest investment this budget is investment in people. And I want to thank the board, and Mrs. Stevenson's here joining us this morning. I want to thank the board for going along with that commitment to ensure that we're investing and reinvesting in school personnel. Over the past 18 months, we have settled contract with CSEA. We're in the process of almost settling the contract with our Teachers Association. We just resolved contract with our administrators. We're right to the tail end of completing contract negotiation with our mid-level supervisors. And this, in the next couple of weeks, I'll be having conversation with the board about our district level administrators. So when you think about that, CSCA represent almost 750 plus employees in the school district. Our Teachers Association, another 750 plus employees in the school district, and our administrators 40 plus. So when you really think about the people, it's people who get the work done. Sometimes we forget about schools that we are places where human interactions, human dynamics is most important. And so the investment in quality staff is something that we've been very cognizant of, and this budget is reflect those, or should I say, that commitment. And I really want to emphasize that point, because oftentimes people look at the budget and they say, well, what's new? Well, it's not necessarily what's new. It's what we're preserving in the budget. And we're preserving quality people to provide a quality experience for our students. Related to quality, we know that we live in a day and age where technology is so significant. Here I am today. We're doing a virtual meet that will be recorded and shared over and viewed over many times over. That's the power of technology. Before this, if we had an in-person and 3 people came, the only people here are those people who showed up. In this venue, we're able to share this information over and over and over. And that's the same way technology impacts what happens in our classrooms, in our offices, throughout the course of the day, throughout the course of the school year. And so certainly one of the focus of this budget is in terms of how do we bolster our technology capacity? And with that, how do we ensure seamless integration of technology in classrooms? And so we talk about one-to-one capacity. In other words, young people having a device in front of them. Each young person having a device that they can work from to expand the experience, expand the school experience. And so we're certainly looking at those type of things. And as we expand technology capacity, we have to address the issues surrounding security of technology. We have to address the issues surrounding the reliability of technology. So that's a strong focus for this budget process as well, in terms of bolstering technology capacity and that seamless integration, again, into our classrooms, into our offices, into our respective workspaces. So we're pleased that this budget will certainly address that head on. A major part of our provisions here, and I think Dr. Wood may even comment on this when we start talking about some summer programs, is how are we supporting our young people? How are we bridging those gaps, if you will? There's a lot of conversation about learning loss as a result of COVID, and those things are very real. From Shen, we're taking a perspective, we're not perseverating on loss, we're focused on bridging the gap to success. We want to ensure that we're not looking at deficits, we're looking at opportunities. And so when we look at supports, be it academic intervention services, English as a new language, acceleration, special education, addressing social emotional needs, all those things are things that we target with this budget to ensure, again, we have the capacity to meet kids where they are and take them to where they ought to be. And that's that bridging that gap. where should kids be, and ensuring that we have the capacity, the staffing capacity, the program capacity to bridge those gaps from kids who might be struggling to kids who need additional boosts to move further along that continuum of learning. So that's when we talk about supports. It's very targeted to bridge those gaps moving forward. As well. And I just want to emphasize the social emotional piece of it because there's a lot of conversations around it. And one of the things that we're trying to do here at Shen, we don't want to do anything one and done. We don't want to have a program like a dose. You take a dose of this and you're fine. We know that the realities of the past 18 months have impacted kids in different ways. And so we want to ensure then that we have programming that recognizing the different ways kids handle and cope as well as adults. And so we recognize that. We also recognize that mental health and wellness is very real. And as a school system, we have an obligation to support that because we want our students to be psychologically ready to learn. And so that's how we look at the whole social emotional learning aspect of it. That's how we look at the mental health wellness piece of it, partnering with organizations such as Saratoga Center for the Family. Those are the things that we want to bring resources to where kids are. Again, to take kids from where they are to where they ought to be, bridging those gaps forward. And that's such a key point as we think about those things. And a third component of this budget that I would like to emphasize is that yes, while as a school district, our overall enrollment has not increased. In fact, it's relatively flat. But what's happening within it, we have shifts. And so how do we then ensure that as those shifts in enrollment, be it from grade level to grade level, that we are accommodating those things with some additional staffing? And so areas of arts and music, we're always trying to figure out how to ensure that we have capacity to provide those things within the schedule, particularly at the secondary level. Athletics, expand capacity to ensure that, again, we have additional capacity to address the needs. Extracurricular activities for kids. CTE, career technology and education. Engineering. We're a large focus on trying to do things that are much more hands-on, bringing in courses into, particularly in high school, that give kids a real flavor of what are career options beyond the walls of Shenendehowa. What are career options if you choose not to go to college? Recognizing that, quite frankly, with you, right now probably the greatest need that's there in the labor market is for skilled professionals. And so how do we then gear up our young people to take advantage of this growing market space? That's part of our obligation as a school system. So this budget, oftentimes this budget, people think that the budget is simply about, math, reading, English. This budget takes into consideration what's the large reality of our students, the world that they live in, and the world that they'll be going in after they leave Shenendehowa. So this budget is very comprehensive, and we try to take a very measured approach to the budget, recognizing that there are many facts and factors at play, and we try to anticipate things. We take this very future-present perspective. In other words, we say, what do we want to look like in 5 years, and look back and ask ourselves the question, what are we then doing today so in 5 years we're positioned to take advantage of those opportunities? That's a very measured approach that we take with the budget, and that's a very measured approach, quite frankly, we have taken over the last 18 months as we have maneuver the uncharted waters of the pandemic to keep our schools open. Very measured, thoughtful approach. And so this budget takes that same approach in terms of asking the question, why are we doing it? What do we want to achieve? And how do we best do it? And so those things fall into what we call here at Shenendehowa, the Shenendehowa learning framework that kind of have the student in the middle and ask the question, how does this impact or add value to the student experience? And so that's that very measured approach by asking those critical questions before we make decisions. On the other side of the proverbial coin is how do we maximize revenue resources? We certainly know that this year, the state budget has additional funds for state aid, and we want to make sure that we're not overzealous in our actions, recognizing that this year is this year. We know the implication of politics, and we know that, okay, there's a promise because there's a court case related to state aid that for the next 2 years, state aid should be at a certain level. But remember, we're not building a budget for a singular year. We're building a budget with multiple years in mind. And so as we think about those implications, we have to ensure that what we're doing today, we can sustain moving forward. And so trying to have that balance in terms of the state aid, leveraging federal funds that we have on the table to ensure that as we move forward with the budget process, we're not creating a structural deficit for us as a school system, or quite frankly, a funding cliff 3 years from now or some other point down the road. So those are important points for the community to understand that when we think about Shen as a system, we think about Shen as a system that's going to be here, and every year should be better than the year before. And so we want to do those kind of things. And so certainly this budget yields some very favorable implications or impact, if you will, on taxpayers. And just I chuckled the other day when I looked back at a newsletter when I first came here, a newsletter in the 05-06 budget year, and at that point we were using $150,000 as the average household value. Now it's $300,000, and I would venture that it might be actually higher considering this recent boom in housing prices. And so when we look at that average house value, so we do recognize that there are houses that are less, that's why it's average, and the houses that are more. And we look at that, the average house value of around $300K, which should see, or based upon estimation right now, a reduction in tax bill. And that's tremendous. When you think about a budget that really position us for continued prosperity as a system, that addresses a multitude of needs and have a very minimal impact on taxpayers. That's the balance. That's the balance that we take when we try to put the budget together, to present it to the Board of Education, to ask for the board's endorsement, to go to the voters on May 17th. That's the balance that we want with this whole budget process. So again, I just want to ask Mrs. Stevenson to share some her perspective as a board member, as well as Dr. Wood, who's been working on the instructional side with this framework piece. And it's a unique thing that we do here at Shen. In terms of, we really try to put everything that we do in context to ensure that we could do it again and again and again. So at this point, Mrs. Stevens, let me just turn to you a little bit and see if you have any thoughts on the budget based upon the things I've said so far.
Yeah, and we've had these conversations around the board table as well. When you were talking about social emotional learning, and so very important, and I don't think the effect is just today. I don't think the effect has just been the last 2 years. I think the effect we're going to feel for the next 5, right? We see it, we feel it. I think we're very keenly aware of it. And not only that, but not just the supports for the students, but support for our staff, everybody, the teachers, what it means to the monitors, the transportation, the bus drivers, and I think we take that all into consideration as we go forward here. The other piece I did want to mention, Dr. Robinson, you brought it up, the trades, and we talk about our culmination. The culmination is the end of the year, right? When we watch the students walk over the stage, walk past the stage, and we talked about this, and we've been talking about this for a while. Naomi talked about it the other night at the board table too with BOCES. And so important. Some kids, it's not their path to go to a 4-year college. It might be a 2-year. It might, and trades, how many of us can really call up a plumber or a contractor right now and get somebody to come over? I mean, I tell you, it's imperative. It's imperative that we prepare the students for whichever avenue is going to make them prosperous and live a quality life after Shenendehowa. So I mean, those are 3 pieces that I take away from this, and we don't take them lightly. Again, all 10,000 students, it's our job to make sure that they fulfill the promise of their public education.
Dr. Wood.
And that's the perfect setup actually for how we review what goes into the budget and even reflect on all of our courses, kindergarten through the senior experience, all levels of students. Increasingly, we have been using this framework that we refer to as the Shen Learning Framework, where students are at the center. We think about what is it that students need to live their best life eventually, what are the skills that they need, and then surrounding the students and their personal experience in our learning environment, and what we hope they feel is their learning environment. We think about what's the curriculum, the what that they're learning, the instruction that happens, that's kind of how they end up learning what is happening in the classroom, and then the how well. How are they doing through assessments? How do we know? And sometimes it's paper pencil, sometimes it is teacher assessment, sometimes it's students writing essays. Whatever that form of assessment is, it's how well are our students doing throughout the system. And we spend a lot of time as we analyze the budget and what is going into the budget, running it through that framework. How will it impact students? What is it that they're specifically going to be learning, and how will that set them up for success in their future? What's the day-to-day experience of their learning, and how are we measuring how well we are positively impacting where students are going?
Thank you both. So I'm just going to transition to a slide, what I call the budget by the numbers. We recognize that there are individuals, and rightfully so, as voting members of the Shen community, to see the budget by the numbers. I just want to explain this graphic that's on here. We talk about the tax cap implications, and just as a reminder, the state of New York some years back put a tax cap in place. In other words, there's a formula that generates a limit. In other words, the tax levy limit is limited at a certain cap, and people refer to it as a 2% cap, but it's really not a 2% cap. It's a formula that drives a percentage. And as you see on this slide, ironically, in the 2021-22 budget, the year that we're in now, the calculation, in fact, came in right at 2%. If you look at the slide below that, the calculation for 22-23 is at 4.29%. And so there's a significant difference in that tax cap amount. And so that tax cap amount would have essentially allowed us to generate about $136.5 million in tax levy. This budget that we're proposing is actually only at 1.87. When I say only, it's a relative in relation to the 4.29. So in other words, the cap allowed us to go up to 4.29. We are coming at a budget at 1.87%. with a tax levy impact of $133.3 million. And yes, I know that there's some people, and I've heard it, Robinson, why are you leaving money on the table? Well, it's not necessarily leaving money on the table. It's back to that measured approach that we have been taking, and I can say it now, this is my 17th budget here at Shenendehowa. We've taken a very measured approach to ensure that we're providing quality programs for our students, and we're balancing the implication on our taxpayers. And I think that's that sweet spot, right? How do we find that sweet spot, that proverbial sweet spot, so we don't have huge spikes in our budget from year to year or huge implication on taxpayers from year to year. So things are very predictable as we move from one year to the next. And so that's what this budget takes into consideration. So again, the tax implication for this budget is at 1.87%, which is in line with past years in terms of the tax implication. And I want to remind again, there's a tax levy impact of 1.87, then there's a tax rate, two different things. The rate is what then goes into tax bills. So sometimes the terms are confused or people try to use them interchangeably, but unfortunately incorrectly. So very different things. Tax cap is a limit. Tax levy is the amount we can collect from taxpayers. Tax rate is the rate that goes into the calculation of your tax bill or the valuation based upon the valuation of your house. And so it's important to have those distinctions in place. And the 1.87 is our levy amount. If you look on the other side of that same graphic, you see that the current year's budget, the 21-22 budget, had a 3.03% increase in the budget increase of $187 million budget. The 22-23 budget is 3.85, slightly higher than the prior year, but again, right within that ballpark in terms of where the budgets are. And so we're pleased with this budget as we move forward as well. So I just want to give you one other graphic that again kind of puts the budget in further perspective. And this is what we call the three-part budget. And so when you think about the budget itself, there's administrative expense, not administrators. I want to make sure we clarify that. Administrative, everything from legal expenses, all those things that goes into running a organization of 2,200 plus employees. all those things that goes into that piece of it. So that's that lavender color to the far left if you either look in either year. In the center of that is the program. That speaks to those things that have a direct impact. Everything has an impact on students, but these things have a direct impact on the student experience. And then the third, which is that green color, is talking about capital. So that's our capital construction. And at Shenendehowa, we're always trying to upkeep buildings, expand where we can or where we need to. So even with all those things happening within the school district, it's a relatively small portion of the total budget. And so when you look from year to year, over the course of the past 3 years, we typically go back 3. So if you look at the 2021, to the far right, the 2021-22 in the center, and then what's being proposed in the 2023, you see that those graphics look very similar. And the reason why the graphics look very similar, because we take that very measured approach year after year to ensure that we're prioritizing budget resources on meeting the needs of our kids. And that's such an important piece of it. So this graphic really, in essence, shows that even after the pandemic, so we think about 21-22 is a budget that was pandemically focused. 2021 was a budget that was pandemically focused. And even in those pandemically focused budget, the priority was on providing programming services to meet the needs of our kids. And they continue to be the same way as we go into 22-23 as well. So again, some important pieces that I really want to ensure that people understand when they think about the budget itself. And so so that's one referendum. So voters will be asked to vote on the budget. And again, a lot of information on the budget is on the district website. I encourage people to go to the district website as your source for official information. And I say that because oftentimes people post things on social media that may not be complete. And incomplete information is just as bad as incorrect information. So we encourage people to go to the district website to see the budget in details. We encourage people to do their research. In terms of before they go into the voting booth, proverbial voting booth, to do the research and do things as well. And I just want to encourage people again, just go back to that one slide, that if you have questions, please submit your questions to shen-pr@shenschools.org, and at the end of this session, we'll address those questions as we move forward. So before we transition to the next section of referendum, just going to see if Dr. Wood and or Mrs. Stevens, if you have any further comments, and then we'll transition to the second referendum.
Now, it's, again, just like I said in the beginning, and you've been pointing to it, it's a sound budget, and we don't vary, even in the last 2 years, right? When we didn't know it was coming. You talked about uncharted waters, though that graph is consistent. Our numbers, I know you got a sweet spot each year that we try not to go above or beyond or under or underneath, and we hit that every time. And we talk about going and learning about the budget. I think it's important that everybody understands what they go in and vote for. We're going to go into the two other pieces of the budget. But again, I'm going to emphasize that people need to come and vote. You need to come out and vote. End of story. You need to come out and vote and know what you're voting for.
All right, great. Dr. Wood, any further comment?
Yeah, I would say one of the things that you would be voting for is the increased supports, specifically in this case, in this budget, at the middle school level. We have a student support counselor position in this budget. We recognize that a number of our students benefit from having somebody else to talk to about things happening personally, makes them more available for their learning. We have a number of parents reaching out asking for supports. Our teachers and counselors and students have been asking, and we believe that that's a real enhancement that we are building into this budget that's also very responsive to current times. We also really made a very concerted effort to preserve a number of the great things that we've been doing across the district, and I think sometimes that is sometimes taken for granted in a budget, right? When you come out and vote for the budget, you're actually helping to ensure that we continue to do the things that we've been able to do and do well in terms of providing services to students.
And before I transition to the candidates, a great statement that both of you made, the emphasis on people not taking for granted what's happening. And when I look at budget votes, our budget vote numbers are declining. And when you think about our community population is actually increasing. but yet our budget vote numbers are declining. And it's not that people aren't supportive of the school district, just that people don't vote. And so I really want to emphasize the point. The vote is at Guana Middle School, where it has been for decades, starting at 7 a.m. on the 17th, the date of the vote, and going till 9 p.m. We have people want absentee ballots. Absentee ballots are available. We'll talk about some of that at the end. But certainly, we want to encourage people to have their voices heard. And I have to tell you, I often say that as superintendent, we can only go as far and as fast as this community is willing to go. And the community support has been tremendous over the years, and we want that community support to be also reflected in the number of people coming out to vote. So certainly want to encourage people to come out to vote as well. So let me transition to the second referendum that the community voted on. Will be the 7 candidates who are vying for 3 seats on the Board of Education. And what you see on your screen is actually the bio, and we have a standard format that each person submits similar type information, so we don't have people trying to compare and contrast, those type of things. Very similar, so we have a fair projection of each candidate to the voters. And this is actually a page from the budget newsletter that will be coming out, I would say probably around May 7th or 8th to all the households. So certainly you have a chance to read the details on those candidates. And this information is right now on the district website. It was sent out earlier this week through different means. So we certainly want to ensure that people are informed in terms of those who have said, I would want to be a part of the Board of Education. I want to be a part of making a positive difference for our students. And so we have Ms. Stevenson. Ms. Stevenson is here as a board president. She's running again for her 3rd term for the board. So we're pleased that Mrs. Stevens is here to join us. We have Jason Little, his first time running for Board of Education. We have Petra Holden, first time running for Board of Education. We have Joe Weber, who actually for a stint when the unfortunate passing of one of our board members, Joe came on board for several months. And he's running again, if you want to say kind of re-election, but actually running for the first time. So Joe Weber is one of those candidates. We have Tom Templeton. Tom Templeton is running again for a first time, running for first term on the Board of Education. We have Jennifer Gleason, who's running for first term on the Board of Education, and Amanda Siska running for the first term on the Board of Education. So we have 7 candidates running for 3 seats, and the 3 candidates with the most votes will be those who will be awarded those 3 seats for 3-year terms. We don't, and the bottom line is just it's a count. So we certainly want to encourage people to come out and vote. It's important. And it's important to read the bios of the board candidates to see who they are, and also to try to understand what they're about as we move forward. So we want people to be informed as they make these decisions about the Board of Education. We want people to be informed as they make decisions about the budget itself, because it's important. It's important to the future of the school district, which is important to the future of our students. And so certainly we're looking to see the result of the board vote as well as we move forward. And I just want to summarize with this last slide that gives all 3 propositions that voters will be asked to vote on May 17th. You have the budget. It's a $194.3 million budget. You have the Board of Education, 3 seats. Each seat's having 3-year terms. We have a transportation piece, which I didn't go into a lot in this presentation. Each year, we've always had a referendum that talks about bus replacement, and our goal was always to try to have the average age of buses around 7 years old. That's the industry standard, and we're at that industry standard. And now we're trying to figure out how do we also then reinvest in some of our multi-purpose maintenance vehicles. What I mean by that, it's the plows, it's all the vehicles I joke that people never see because they're at work from 2 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock in the morning during the winter months to ensure that campus roads are cleared and parking lots are cleared. So we want to reinvest in those vehicles as well to ensure that we're prepared to deal with any of those emergencies as we move forward. So that's the 3rd referendum voters will be asked to act on the May 17th vote as well. So we're pleased to present the budget and those two additional referendums to you as a part of this community conversation. Just as a reminder, again, the vote is Tuesday, May 17th. The polls open at 7 a.m. I'll be there myself to greet those early birds, and close at 9 p.m. and I'll be there as well to meet those people who run in and say, hold the doors. And we have to be serious. At 9 o'clock, the polls stop. And we've had people come in at 9:01, but legally at 9 o'clock, based upon the clock in the gymnasium, everything stops and the voting ends. So we encourage people to try to come within that window and come out and vote. We also recognize that people sometimes wonder, so what's the eligibility? Can I vote? And it's important for people to know this, because sometimes I've heard people say, why do we have kids voting? Well, if you're 18 years old and you have been a resident in the district for 30 days prior to the vote, and a U.S. citizen, you can vote. And so, yes, we have high school kids, some of them who are 18 years old, will come out and vote. We have kids in college who are home from college. They'll come out and vote. So we certainly want that. We have, on the other spectrum, we have many of our senior citizens who we have a great relationship with some of our local senior citizen facilities that provide transportation for our seniors to come out and vote. We want that. We want our parents to come out and vote. And so if you're, again, U.S. citizen, 18 years or older, have lived in the district for the past 30 days, you're eligible to vote on the school district. We don't have a pre-registration. We ask for official identification, typically a driver's license or typical government issued ID that's required, and we're going to check those IDs. We're going to document your address. And I just want to emphasize, and sadly I have to emphasize this point, that it's a crime to falsify your vote. It's a crime to say, I live here, but I'm voting, I live someplace else, and I'm going to try to vote here, I'm going to try to vote twice. And so, yes, there's a trust relationship at place, but I really want to emphasize the criminality of doing that. We haven't had any issues in the past, don't anticipate any issues in the future, but I have to say that piece as well as we move forward. So the absentee ballots are also available here at the district office. If you need an absentee ballot, call the district clerk, and the number is on the screen. It's 881-0623, or quite frank with you, if you call 881-0600, they'll find the district clerk and make sure that you have a copy of an absentee ballot as well. So we want to get people on options, different options, to ensure that your voice is heard with this process. So before I transition to our next slide and transition out of the vote piece, I'm just going to double check to make sure that if there are any questions that so far has came in related to the budget presentation, and if so, I want to address those questions, just looking briefly. There's not a question related to the budget. However, someone posted a question related to, actually, this question related to, I'm just looking at my screen here, so forgive me for 1 second. Question related to transportation and being marked absent, being marked tardy if you're a parent driving. And so we all know that transportation and the shortage of driver has been a major Achilles heel across the country, period. And I have to say kudos to our transportation personnel. And I give you a good example. On Friday, this past Friday, yesterday, we had 45 drivers absent. 45. And the dispatchers, the 3 dispatchers, they maneuvered routes. The drivers who were there, they took on additional tasks. They made it happen. Our kids got to school. We opened school. And I say that very proudly because, as you know, there are times in different places, different school districts have closed because of transportation issues. So I really want to emphasize that kudos to Al Karam and his team. Those dispatchers worked magic yesterday. They work magic every day, to be quite frank with you. But yesterday in particular was the worst scenario we've had all year, with 45 drivers being out between sick and other reasons, and they were able to get kids to school. We recognize that it may not be right on time, but the kids got to school. And so the question that this parent posed was about parent being late. One of the things that if kids are late because of buses, those kids are not being marked tardy. If kids are late because parents are getting to school late, those kids are being marked tardy. There's a difference. There's 2 difference of those things. And we also have to recognize, particularly at elementary level, we're not holding being marked tardy against a kid's grade. Yes, over time, if a child is late every day to school, there's a cumulative impact on the overall experience that child is having. Certainly that's a piece. But tardy marks don't go and we don't subtract that from a child's grade. That's not a part of our process. So it's important that we recognize that transportation is a challenge for us as a system, and we're working a lot of different ways to ensure that our schools are open, that kids are here and here relatively on time. And we know that many parents drive their children to school. We try to have parents come before the buses to make sure that we don't have the integration of cars and buses at the same time. And so we try to have those drop off before the bus drop off. So we try to encourage parents to keep doing that as well. So the question about marking, being marked tardy or not, based upon if you as a parent drop them off late, yes, that in some cases that's the case. And quite frankly, if it's 5 or 10 minutes, I'm sure that's not the case. 15 minutes beyond, yes, I'm sure that teachers are marking a kid tardy. And I would say that, like with most like these type things, if there is a specific concern that a parent has, I mean, reach out to your child's teacher, reach out to your child's principal, and have those conversations as well. But I just want to emphasize the transportation piece and give a lot of credit to our transportation department, particularly over this past year, recognize the shortage. A second question, again, wasn't a budget question per se, but somebody put a question that has budget implication related to security personnel. And it's going to summarize. Basically, the person was asking that we should have different shifts across the district, and maybe it's just lack of knowledge, but we do actually. We have security personnel on campus 24 hours, 7 days a week, and so we have multiple shifts of people on campus. And right now, particularly as we go into the spring, where more and more kids are driving, where traffic congestion on campus is the Achilles heel, we're looking to add some additional security staff to help with traffic control, to ease traffic on and off campus. And so we always, this time of year, add some additional staff to do those kind of things as we go into the spring months. And so you'll see some additional folks on campus to manage the traffic flow as well. So the question was about shifts. Yes, we do. We have campus security 24/7, different shifts across the school district. We also have a great partnership with Saratoga County Sheriff Department. They're always patrolling school grounds, as well as the New York State Police always patrolling school grounds. So all those things provide truly a strong sense of safety and security on the campus on a 24/7 basis. So hopefully the question that the person posed that was addressed appropriately. And again, if not, I'll be more than happy to do some follow-up if necessary. And the third question that, again, it wasn't specific to the budget process, but a question surrounding full-day kindergarten. This has been a topic of many conversations at the board table. And in terms of building the capacity towards full-day K, we're in the process right now of working with our architects to do a feasibility study in terms of looking at existing building capacity, asking questions surrounding, do we add to buildings, do we build new buildings, all those things. We're in the process of doing it now. We hope that the plan is by the second board meeting in May, we'll have a presentation to the board in terms of what we know now and some next steps moving forward. Because the big thing for Shenendehowa versus many other school districts is space. We're not losing enrollments to the point where we have all these empty classrooms. In fact, we're at a point now where we are stretched to the limit in many instances. And so space becomes a priority for us in terms of how do we transition to full-day K. So we're aggressively addressing, looking at those things as we move forward. And again, planning forward, this isn't something for September, folks, because just to give you some perspective, literally, if today we decided that we wanted to add some additional classrooms to any of our school buildings, that process from conception to construction, minimally but 3 years. Minimally. And I say that because sometimes people get upset to think, oh my God, you guys are taking so long. There's a lot of things we have to go through. We also in the process of looking at land. And in the second here, I'm just going to ask Mrs. Stevenson to offer her comments, because this has been a major topic of a conversation for the Board of Education. So I don't know, Dan, if you want to just talk about the full-day K piece and some of from your perspective as board president.
Yeah, so this conversation has gone on, I think actually my full tenure on the board since 2016 and before that. 2018, we actually started looking at land. And it's just amazing the price of land gone from 2018 to now. But in the recent months, almost every couple of weeks, we have sat down and had this conversation about land, and we're zoning in on some possible more possible conversation on what it's going to look like. We know that Half Moon is the only, only land really available with bigger parcels in it at this point. Clifton Park is pretty much fully developed. So we're looking more in the Half Moon area, like Dr. Robinson said, if you have 40 plus acres to sell, let us know. But seriously, we have, and most recently this week, we sat down with our legal to have that conversation, and what it's gonna look like for next steps. And like Dr. Robinson said, it's not something that you just flip a switch. This takes time. There's a voting that has to be done in the public. There's a process. There's a legal process. So we have to follow that. But we are all very aware. We talk about this at the good of the order at every board meeting to alert and let everybody know and communicate what we have been doing. So it is on the forefront. We are looking at, and I've been talking about two different avenues, right? We looked at, you talked about a little bit, the additional space and what we have available on our blueprint now in the schools. And then the other avenue is looking to build. So yes, very, very much in front of what we're talking about.
Dr. Wood, I don't know if you have any comments from your perspective, from the Deputy Superintendent instructional perspective related to the full day K focus that we have been having for the past several months and years.
Well, I would start by saying that the academic experience our students are getting in the half day very much prepares them for full day first grade. Yes, we see full day kindergarten as a direction we want to be moving and are certainly looking into. And there would be some extra time that students would be in school. However, we want to assure everybody that our students do very well in the half day K program moving to first grade. We would be making some adjustments to the instructional program as we look to move to the full day kindergarten. And also, to your point, we've been looking extensively at the layout of all 8 of our elementary schools, working with our architects. And also, we have to really carefully consider all the services that students receive. It's not as simple as just looking at classroom spaces. Academic intervention services, physical education, how many sections of students can fit through the cafeteria at a reasonable hour without having students start lunch at 9:30 in the morning when they've just gotten off the bus. You know, there are a number of factors that go into the decision, and you know, it's certainly not taken lightly, because when we do it, when we get to that point, we want to make sure that we've planned for it and planned well, and that it's a good experience for all students, including kindergarten, but all the way through our 5th grade, and the staff providing the service throughout as well.
And related to that, before I transition out of this, something that Dr. Wood just said has prompted this piece of it, and Mrs. Stevenson also alluded to it, that when we look at, be it full day K, or when we look at the budget in terms of enrollment impact on the budget, we take all those things in consideration in terms of staffing and space. And we always hear, particularly at the elementary level, people talk about class sizes, and so we have a range, right? We have a range that we try to have class sizes within, and sometimes a grade level in a particular building might be on the higher side of the range, while a grade level might be on the lower side of the range. And that's the reality of just how enrollment trends are within schools over the years. Related to that, one of the things that right now we're looking at, even some of the recent construction housing developments that's taking place in the school district, and I often share that on Sundays, part of my Sunday morning routine is I drive here to the district office, I stop at Dunkin' Donuts, and it's not a plug for Dunkin' Donuts, but I stop at Dunkin' Donuts, grab a cup of coffee, I come to the district office for 2 or 3 hours, get some work done, and then I always choose a different neighborhood in the district to drive through just to get a flavor of what's happening, particularly in terms of new construction. Last week I was driving up Route 9 and seeing new construction, like, wow, I didn't realize we could build houses. The week before that I was driving by Octave Exit 8 and seeing the development going behind Octave. Each time I see those things, we have to start thinking about what's going to be the enrollment impact for our school buildings. And yes, we're right now in the conceptual phase of trying to figure out when do we do some potential redistricting again. The last time we did redistricting is probably about almost 10 years. And when we did it, we thought it was that model was going to hold for about 6. That model has hold for about 10, which is great. And so now we're in getting that next phase of looking at that again. And so that's going to be a much more aggressive look in later in the spring, into the summer, as some of these developments come online, and we try to understand the implication of who's buying those houses. And each year, the Board of Education has a presentation to the board. We do a enrollment study, forecasts, and we hire outside Capital District Region Planning Commission. They do a pretty comprehensive study. So each year we get updated data in terms of enrollment trends, in terms of building trends, and they try to figure out when and where and what time do we need to start thinking about things like redistricting so we don't have gross imbalances. Yes, we're going to have fluctuation and differences in grade levels, even grade levels within a grade level within the school. We know that. The piece we're trying to guard against is those gross imbalances across buildings. And so those are type things that, yes, we're always looking at, always planning forward to ensure that we're ahead of those significant shifts before those shifts occur. So again, just want to emphasize that, Mr. Stevenson.
Now, I got two more things to say. When we were talking about, Dr. Wood reminded me, and along this route, you have, and Dr. Wood has, talked to all the elementary leaders and what this would look like, right? And each one of their blueprint of schools. The other piece you were talking about building, we're talking about land and whatnot. We don't just build, you wouldn't just build a school for today, for what enrollment you have today. You have to think, like we're talking about 2035, you're thinking that far ahead if you're building something, right? Is it a sister school? Is it a standalone school? What will it be? So all those considerations need to be taken.
Absolutely.
And very thoughtful.
Absolutely. And speaking of building, let me just transition to a slide. We have some construction. A referendum was passed by the voters a year ago, and now we are gearing up to start some of that construction. It's a three-phase construction, and it's three-phase, and it typically happens over 3 summers. And the reason why, we can't shut school down to do construction. So most of the construction within our schools actually takes place within a tight window from about mid-May to mid-August. Because we know that mid-May is always tight because kids are still in school, but we start doing some of the legwork for construction. And mid-August, it has to be ready because kids will come back to school in September. So it's a tight window for most of the construction that we do here at school. And so things are typically phased out over the portion of 3 summers. So this summer, we're going to start some work. In fact, we already started some work on a turf field behind CODA. That's going to be a tremendous benefit to our physical education classes and to our athletic program and to our community programs. And again, I drive through the campus and I call it, it's like the Little League field. We have tons and tons and tons of youth-related programs and some of our lower-level sports that use in those fields and facilities. So that's going to be a major enhancement for that use. We're doing things like we have to expand parking lot capacity. We have more and more kids driving, and so all those kind of things that sometimes people don't think about, right? So we have to think about how do we expand some parking lot capacity, in this case behind High School East. Again, trying to maximize the space we have, reconfigure space to provide more parking capacity. We're looking at power upgrades. You know, we were talking about before about bolstering technology, right? So it's kind of when you do one thing, then it has implication in something else. The more devices we have plugging in, the more power we need to have for devices. And when you think about it, our schools, campus elementary schools, for example, all those schools are 50 plus years old. High school, 70 plus years old. When they were built, they weren't built with the notion of one-to-one technology in mind. And so we're always retrofitting our spaces and upgrading power. Power backup generators in schools become an important piece of it because we have seen it. We've seen some power outage especially during the winter months. So how do we have backup generators to make sure our systems are up all the time? Roofing is a big part of it. We have a lot of roofing spaces and asbestos removal because, again, what materials were used 15, 20 years ago versus material that's used today, we have to make those adjustments. So those are some of the things that's happening this summer. And so when people think about what's happening with construction, there's a lot of things happening. There's a lot of things in the hopper to move forward as well. So we're pleased with some of those type things. And so just want to give the community a sense of when you start seeing this summer, and hopefully all these projects will be done by around August 15th or so, and looking forward to September utilization. So pretty excited in terms of the construction piece. Just going to pause and get back to Justice C and us for a little bit. And Dr. Wood is going to talk about, sometimes people think about Shen as, school is done in June. Well, we're a 24/7 operation. And I joke all the time that even during the course of the regular school year, we have 2 shifts. School gets out at 3 o'clock, 3:30, and then there's a whole wave of activities that happen in our school buildings from 4 o'clock on. And on any given weekend, you drive through the campus, otherwise our facilities are being used. We're a community school. We're a community school. We want to be a resource to the community. And so certainly we want to do those side things. And just want Dr. Wittes to talk about some of those learning opportunities that we have ahead of us as well. So this slide you'll see here, and you'll hear from Dr. Witt that talks about some of those summer learning opportunities here at Shen.
Great, thank you. So you're right, we wrap up a school year at the end of June, and then we really ramp right up again for a number of opportunities for students in the summer. The first that I want to point out to our families is that we will have, it's not posted live yet, but at the end of June will be, a whole web page devoted to summer learning opportunities that parents and children can do at home. The Summer Learning Opportunities page will be on the district website at the banner across the top. And when you get to that page, thank you, Mr. Nardelli, who's pulling it up, supporting our technology this morning. There are so many embedded opportunities on this page for students in all grades. If you are an elementary parent, or your next door neighbor is an elementary parent, or a relative, please remind the parents about this page come end of June, July. There, just on the kindergarten page alone, are activities that you can do with your children coming into kindergarten to make sure that they are really ready for the rigors of kindergarten math instruction. There are simple things you can be doing while you're driving in the car, working on counting in order, and when you see objects off in the distance, counting them aloud and then holding up the fingers. How many fingers does that equal? You can start doing addition as you're going in the car. Making sure the kids know their address and their phone numbers, mom's and dad's cell phone numbers. So many things that you can be doing with your children to make sure that they're ready. And that goes all the way through to our senior level courses. So the kindergarten, first grade, second grade, we have great resources for parents and children online all summer long. You'll also notice we've been building out a counseling tab you see on the screen right now. There are resources for grades 6 through 8, 9 through 12, and we're currently working on the kindergarten through 5th grade page so that we have some social emotional activities. And also there's no time like the present, moms and dads, to be talking with your kids about career opportunities. That's a lot of what we're exposing kids to in the counseling office, thinking about how is what I'm learning today setting me up for my learning of tomorrow or my career path going forward. We also have pages specific and dedicated to summer reading. Kids should be reading in the summer. There are long lists of choices of books. We try to make sure that they're wide and varied and that they appeal to various students who have different interests. Certainly if you have a question or concern about what your child might be reading on that, you're going to want to take a look at that list with your child and make sure that you are picking out something that you believe to be appropriate for the developmental needs and your family structure and what you want your child reading this summer. But please make sure that they are reading. I also strongly encourage you to have your child writing this summer. These are skills that, when you go extensive periods of time without doing it, it makes September that much more challenging. There is so much families can do at home to make sure that their students' skills stay sharp. And I also, and it's fine that you moved away from the page, I just want to put in a plug for making sure that kids have summer. So we know that some parents take this, truthfully, a little too far. Kids do need some time to lay around and learn what it means to deprogram and not be on devices and not be driven. I mean, that's part of mental health and balance and learning how to balance the world of work and learning and also just taking care of yourself. So just think about what the right balance is, and I know most of us strive for the right balance and never feel like we quite hit it, but really encourage our parents out there to think carefully about what that right balance is for your child over the course of the summer. Also, really encourage exposure to activities. Just going for a walk and having a conversation, putting the devices away makes a world of difference. We also have a number of in-person activities going on campus this summer. The first I'll talk about is our elementary summer literacy support program. That program we organize for somewhere around 300 students, and those are students who are working toward performing on grade level. We focus on reading and math skills. This summer it is going to be housed at Tasago Elementary, and we'll probably use some of the classrooms in Scano as well, just due to the size of the program. That is 16 days in the summer starting in mid-July and going through the first week of August. It's Mondays through Thursdays. And if your child is invited to participate in that program, please be on the lookout for a letter from your school principal. And we ask that you just kind of quickly turn around, register your child for that so that we can continue to offer those seats to other students if you're not able to have your child participate this summer. Another program that we run every summer is our Special Education Extended School Year program. There are very specific criteria for entry into that program as it is determined by the Committee on Special Education each year. That is a 6-week program that happens for students at High School West and also Oranjan. And again, you would be informed of your child's eligibility to participate through the special education administrator that you've been working with for your child. We also have middle school and high school summer school that will be at High School West again. We're typically, the majority of students, if they're in the middle school, they're working on skill building. Perhaps they failed a few courses in the middle school. We're struggling through some of the content, and we're going to want to bring them in to really work on skill development. If they're a 9th through 12th grader or a high schooler, they need to be earning course credits. And so if they have failed any of their courses, we're going to be asking that they come to summer school to recover those course credits so that they can move toward graduation on time. It really is our goal to make sure that our students are graduating high school in 4 years wherever possible so that they can really enter either world of work or, as Deanna was saying, going into a trade or starting Hudson Valley or going off to a 4-year college, which, that wide range, our high school is designed to help students work toward all of those potential next steps for them post high school. We are also looking at adding a few new programs to high school summer school that are actually either new credits, or we're looking at a coordinated volunteerism community service offering this summer. That's kind of under development right now. We hope to have that live for this summer. But really thinking about what are the types of offerings we could provide to all students, even those who earned all their credits and are performing on grade level. I know one of the courses that we've done for many years now is high school health. We've offered as a summer course where students spend some time learning the content at home and also come in person for some of the sessions, and that frees up time in their schedule in the high school to take electives or to be in their performing groups of their choice. And we have a number of students who take 2 science classes in a year or take 2 world language classes in a year. So having health out of the way sometimes in the summer, and some of our really busy students are those in athletics or dance or extremely active in the community through volunteerism. Sometimes they really want to make sure that they're preserving a study hall during the school year, which we highly encourage as well. So that is a way to kind of get ahead on your credits through the high school health course that we offer. Additionally, I'll point out that we provide the Shen Summer Adventures through our community education. Those are camp-style courses for students. My understanding is that registration has gone live, and we're very nearly out of seats. It is amazing how popular those programs are, and so if you happen to miss that this year, please put it on your calendar next year. I know I put things on my phone to check out early as a reminder to myself if you want to get your kids enrolled in the Shen Summer Adventures program. So a lot going on this summer. As we look to wrap up this school year, we start planning immediately for summer opportunities for our students.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wood. As you're going through that, I'm reflecting myself when my kids were younger, and every kid is like, so what are we going to do now? School is out. It's the first question, right? And I think for many parents, they struggle to try to figure out what they're going to do with their kids and trying to make sure they're doing something that's productive, but something that's not so taxing, because we do recognize that the summer months, especially here in the Northeast, you have to take advantage of the 2 summer days you have, right? And certainly today, here we are on probably one of the nicest days in the spring, and we're here talking to you, which is great because we all leave here and hopefully take advantage of today as well. I say that because as we look to conclude the session, just want to make sure again, I'm going to ask our technical folks if any additional questions came in, and right now we're seeing none. And again, I just want to emphasize that it's important that if there are questions and concerns people have, that they go to the district as their resource. In many cases, a lot of the confusion that we have is when people hear things out there in the community that's incomplete and take it as the proverbial gospel, so to speak. And we try to ensure that we communicate as effectively as possible. And these are the sessions that we try to do so. We recognize that even today that the number of people who would like to see it live may not be, but this will be recorded and shared out. So people have information at their fingertips. It's so important for people to do so. Even yesterday, we issued information surrounding an advisory that Saratoga County put out related to COVID. We want to be a resource to our community. So we share that information out to our school community so people understand the implication of those type things on us as we move forward in this mask optional environment. We will continue the mask optional environment, and we have had kids who have been wearing masks all the time, and we have kids who may, and staff who knows, come tomorrow or Monday, may wear masks, and it's a mask optional environment. We don't want to have an environment where people feel pressured to do or not to do versus making a choice based upon what they think is for their best interest in health. And so that's the environment we try to foster as we move forward. So before we kind of close out, I'm going to ask Mrs. Stevenson if she has any final comments, and same with Dr. Wood, and then I'll offer some final comments of gratitude to this community as well.
So Mrs. Miller actually sent a question in about Regents, Regents happening, and the preparation for Regents. I expect that would happen. It would cover the same material as it did.
Yes, so our teachers are preparing to do the preparation for the Regents exams in the classrooms. It's a good question because we have a number of students who are going to be sitting for Regents exams that have not sat for Regents exams now with the exemptions that we've had for the last couple of years. So it is really important. It's a good reminder for me as mom of a child who will be taking Regents exams to be going home and saying, are you making sure you're staying up on this? Are you doing the preparation that your teachers have provided for you? And yes, there will be preparation for them in the classroom as well.
Thank you. My final comment, so we reviewed a budget today, right? We reviewed a large budget, something we do not take lightly, something that does not happen by accident. This community school supporting, this budget supporting public education at all levels for all students, and this budget is 100% supportive of that. So all I'm asking this community is to be informed, ask questions, and please come out and vote.
Thank you, Deanna. Dr. Wood.
So I was thinking, as we were talking about coming out and voting, sometimes people don't have an image of that in their head about what that actually looks like. So like where Gowanna is located, right? When you first pull on campus, you kind of bear to the left and Gowanna is right there. You'll see a big parking lot. You can pull into that space. You then walk into a very obvious entry, right? And so Dr. Robinson, when they get there, they walk up to the
Tons
table.
of instructions.
And it's so laid out, and it really is okay if you've never done this before. Like there are tons of people to help you. Nobody needs to feel self-conscious or embarrassed. It's just, and you're one of many who are there, and it goes quickly. That's the other thing. I mean, we would love for long lines, but the reality is it moves quickly. So people are in and out. Anything that they need to bring.
No, I mean, the main thing is bring your official ID. I can't tell you how many times people come in and have to run back out and get their ID, driver's license, permits, passports, whatever the official ID that you may have as well. So that's a great point, Elizabeth, in terms of sometimes we take for granted the process itself, and for people who are new voters, this is a very, quite frank with you, a low pressure process in terms of voting at the school, and so we certainly want to encourage people to come out and vote as well. And just want to also emphasize, and I want to say thank you to the Board of Education. And when you think about not only for the budget, but when you think about the school district over the past 18 to 24 months, we have had three different types of budget. The budget that we have for 2021 was hijacked, to be quite frank with you, to shift the focus on COVID, because the COVID initiative came in March and we had to completely pivot how we did provide education to kids. The budget we have for 21-22 was still largely focused on PPE and safety, and this budget continues to be focused on COVID precautions and not a but, and now start to bridge our way forward. So this is truly a transitional budget in so many ways to ensure that we are again bolstering our capacity to move forward as a school district. And I want to always make the statement, because I don't want people to assume that the fact that we are presenting this budget, I'm telling people how to vote. I can't tell you how to vote. I'm going to give you information so you can make the best choice. And it's important that people be informed, do their research, and make the best choice. And as superintendent of schools, I'm proud of what the team has put together to present to the board. I'm grateful for the board adopting that budget to put forth to our voters, and looking forward to May 17th as another great opportunity for us to write another chapter of Shenendehowa. So again, thank you for those who took the time this morning to listen in. For those who might be watching this recording after the fact, thank you very much as well. And as we look to May 17th, it's a important point for the school district. And so please do your research, ask questions, be informed, but more importantly, come out and vote. Thank you very much and have a great day.